The sand is still wet from the morning executions. Valeria is 26 years old, and she can feel the dampness seeping through the thin linen shift they have dressed her in, can smell the copper-iron stench of blood mixing with animal waste from the beast cages, can hear through the stone walls the roar of 50,000 voices that will soon be calling for her destruction. She was until 11 days ago the most powerful woman in Rome, who was not an empress, the favorite mistress of Emperor Domitian, keeper of his secrets, confidant of his fears, the woman who shared his bed on nights when his wife Dishar could not satisfy his particular appetites. Now she stands in a holding cell beneath the Flavian amphitheater, her hair shorn to stubble, her body stripped of the silks and jewels that had marked her status, waiting for the iron gate to rise and deliver her to an arena where 80,000 eyes will watch her die in ways that the crowd has been promised will exceed anything they have witnessed before. Through the bars, she can see other prisoners being prepared for the day's entertainment. Criminals, prisoners of war, slaves who had displeased their masters, the usual supply of human fodder that Rome's appetite for spectacle consumed daily. But they are being prepared for ordinary deaths, quick deaths, the sword or the beasts or the flames that would end their suffering within minutes. Her death will not be quick. The emperor has made this clear. A guard approaches the cell. He is perhaps 40 years old, his face bearing the weathered indifference of someone who has watched thousands of people die and has learned to see them as components of entertainment rather than human beings. He looks at her the way he would look at a prop being prepared for a theatrical production, assessing condition, confirming readiness, ensuring that the merchandise will perform as advertised. The emperor sends a message. The guard says he wants you to know that Marcus Aemilius died this morning. The senator, he was beheaded at dawn in private with a single stroke. A clean death, a merciful death. Marcus, the name strikes her like a physical blow. The man she had loved or thought she loved. The man whose touch had made her forget for brief hours that she belonged to a monster. Dead now, ended with a single stroke, while she remains alive to face something designed to be the opposite of mercy. The emperor wants you to understand the comparison. The guard continues. Senator Aemilius received the death of a Roman nobleman because he was a Roman nobleman. You will receive the death of a faithless woman because that is what you are. His death lasted seconds. Yours will last hours. His body will be returned to his family for proper burial. Yours will be fed to the animals after the crowd has finished watching what they do to you. What they do to me? Valeria repeats. Tell me exactly. You don't know? The guard seems surprised. The emperor has published the program. The entire city knows what is planned for you. I have been in a cell for 11 days. No one has told me anything. The guard's expression shifts. Slightly not to sympathy, but to something like professional interest. He has seen many condemned prisoners, but few have approached their fate with the calm she is displaying. First, you will be paraded through the arena naked. The crowd will be permitted to throw things, nothing that would kill you. The guards will ensure that. Rotted food, animal waste, whatever they have brought. This is the humiliation phase. And then you will be given to the bastari, not the professional beast fighters, the men who handle the animals, who train them. They have been instructed to entertain the crowd before the next phase begins. The emperor has specified that this entertainment should last at least 1 hour. Valeria feels her stomach revolt, but she keeps her face neutral. She has spent 3 years in Diane's court. She knows how to hide what she feels. And the finale, the bowl. The guard's voice carries a weight that suggests even he finds this excessive. You have heard of the reenactments, the mythological scenes. Parsifia, yes. The Raid Mori. 0449. Emperor is fond of recreating myths for the arena. He has specified that you will play Pasiphae. A special apparatus has been constructed. The bull has been selected, one of the largest from the Spanish provinces, specially trained for. He pauses. For this purpose, the word settles into the cell like something physical. Purpose, as if what is being planned for her is purposeful rather than monstrous. How long? She asks. The entire spectacle. The emperor has allocated the afternoon from the 6th hour until sunset, perhaps 5 hours. In total, depending on how long you survive the finale, 5 hours. She has 5 hours of remaining existence, and most of those hours will be spent in agonies, designed to entertain a crowd of 50,000 and to demonstrate what happens to women who betray the emperor's trust. But she also has something that the guard does not know about, something that Domitian does not know she possesses. Information. 3 years as the emperor's mistress has given her access to secrets that powerful men would pay fortunes to possess or suppress. She knows about the conspiracies Domitian fears, the senators he suspects, the evidence he has gathered against men whose families could destroy him if they knew what he planned. She knows about the financial arrangements that fund his building projects, the bribes that secure his general's loyalty, the blackmail that keeps his enemies silent. She knows things that could shake the foundations of the imperial system. And she has been thinking, during 11 days of isolation, about how to use what she knows. What you are about to learn has been deliberately excluded from the histories that celebrate Roman entertainment as sophisticated spectacle. The poets who praised the Flavian amphitheater as an architectural marvel chose not to describe in detail what happened on its sands. The historians who documented the games mentioned executions and beast fights in general terms, avoiding the specific methods that made Roman crowds roar with approval. Tonight, you will learn what actually happened in Rome's most famous Raid Mori 0713 arena. You will learn about the punishments reserved for women who offended the powerful, the spectacles designed specifically to degrade and destroy female bodies in ways that male executions never matched. You will learn about the mythological reenactments that used condemned prisoners as unwilling actors in scenes of bestial horror. You will learn about the apparatus constructed for these reenactments, the devices that positioned women for encounters with animals that no human being should experience. You will learn about the crowds who watched, the emperors who commissioned, the entire industry of degradation that made Rome's arena entertainment the most sophisticated system of public cruelty the world had ever seen. You will learn about Valeria, whose affair with Senator Marcus Aemilius was discovered by an emperor already paranoid about conspiracies against him. You will learn what Domitian planned for her, what she knew that he did not realize she knew, and how the spectacle that was meant to destroy her became something else entirely. Subscribe if you want to understand the full horror of Roman entertainment. Comment below telling me where you are watching from, because the Colosseum was not merely a place where gladiators fought. It was a machine for public cruelty that refined torture into art form, and Valeria is about to be fed into that machine. But before I tell you what happened in the arena that day, I need to take you back. I need to explain how Roman spectacles functioned, why they took the forms they did, and what made the punishment of unfaithful women a particular specialty of imperial entertainment, because you cannot understand what Valeria faced without understanding the system that produced her fate. The Roman arena was not designed for simple execution. It was designed for spectacle, and spectacle required narrative, drama, emotional engagement that transformed killing into entertainment. This principle shaped every aspect of arena programming. Gladiatorial combat provided narrative through suspense. Would the favorite win? Would the underdog survive? Beast hunts provided narrative through danger. Would the hunters prevail against exotic animals from the edges of the known world? Executions of criminals provided narrative through justice. The condemned were receiving what they deserved, and the crowd was participating in the righteous destruction of those who had violated society's rules. But executions posed a particular challenge. A simple beheading or crucifixion provided limited entertainment value. Condemned died, the crowd cheered, the spectacle was over within minutes. To extend the entertainment, to make executions worthy of the elaborate venues that housed them, Roman producers developed increasingly sophisticated methods of prolonged killing. Mythological reenactments became the pinnacle of this development. Rather than simply executing prisoners, producers staged scenes from myths and legends, casting the condemned as characters whose fates were already written. A condemned man might be dressed as Orpheus and torn apart by bears, playing out the god's destruction at the hands of the Mayans. A condemned woman might be cast as deer, tied to a bull and dragged to death in recreation of the punishment inflicted on that mythological queen. These reenactments served multiple purposes. They provided narrative structure. The crowd knew the story and anticipated its conclusion. They provided cultural legitimation. The executions became performances of shared mythology rather than mere violence. And They provided creative opportunities for producers who competed to stage increasingly elaborate and disturbing versions of familiar tales. The punishment of women through mythological reenactment had its own particular tradition. Women's bodies were considered appropriate for different kinds of spectacle than men's bodies. Where men might be armed and permitted to fight, maintaining some dignity even in death, women were typically rendered helpless, their vulnerability the central entertainment rather than any resistance they might offer. The pacifier myth was among the most frequently reenacted because it combined multiple elements that Roman crowds found entertaining. Sexual degradation. The queen's union with the bull was explicitly erotic in nature. Bestiality. The involvement of an animal added shock value that purely human spectacles could not match, and lengthy suffering, unlike a quick death by sword or beast. The passive reenactment could be prolonged. The condemned woman's ordeal extended. For the crowd's entertainment, the apparatus used for these reenactments was called the wooden cow. It was a hollow framework covered in hide shaped to resemble a cow or heifer into which the condemned woman was placed and positioned. The framework included restraints that prevented escape and openings that provided access for the bull, which had been trained to mount the apparatus. Contemporary sources describe this device with clinical precision that makes clear it was a standard piece of arena equipment, maintained and modified. Through generations of use, carpenters and engineers refined its design. Animal trainers developed methods for ensuring the bull would perform as required. The entire apparatus represented systematic expertise in the production of horror. This was the system that Valeria was about to experience. Not random cruelty, but organized entertainment, refined over centuries, performed before audiences who had been promised something special and expected delivery on that promise. Now let us return to the cell beneath the arena, where Valeria is preparing to deploy the only weapon she has left. I need to speak with someone, she told the guard. Someone with authority, not you, someone who can make decisions. You are condemned. You have no right to speak with anyone. I have information that the emperor does not know I possess, information that certain people would pay a great deal to suppress or to reveal. The guard studied her. She could see calculation happening behind his eyes, the weighing of risk against potential reward. What kind of information? The kind that gets people killed, the kind that changes fortunes, the kind that might be worth a delay of my execution while its value is assessed. The emperor has scheduled your spectacle for today. He will be in attendance. The crowd has been promised. The crowd will wait. They always wait. And if what I know reaches the wrong ears because I die before I can bargain with it, certain powerful people will be very unhappy. Those people will look for someone to blame. You are the last person to speak with me. Do you want to be the one they blame? This was a gamble. She had no way of knowing whether the guard was corrupt enough to be motivated by self-interest or loyal enough to report her attempted manipulation, but she had no other options. The spectacle would begin in hours, and she needed to create alternatives. The guard was silent for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away without responding. Valeria felt despair rising in her chest, but forced it down. One attempt had failed. She would make others. She would use every moment remaining to search for escape, for leverage, for any possibility that did not end with the bull. An hour passed, then another. The sounds from the arena above told her that the morning's entertainment was underway. Beast hunts, executions, the preliminary events that warmed up the crowd for the afternoon's main attractions. Then the guard returned. He was not alone. The man with him was perhaps 50 years old, wearing the toga of a senator, his face familiar from Domitian's court. Valeria searched her memory and found the name Lucius Antonius Saturninus, a governor, a military commander, a man whose ambitions were poorly hidden and whose loyalty to Diane was widely questioned. You claim to have information, Saturninus said without preamble. The guard tells me you believe it has value. I know it has value. The question is whether you are willing to pay for it. I'm not in the habit of bargaining with condemned prisoners. Then why are you here? You came because you are curious. You came because the possibility that I know something useful is worth investigating. You came because you are a man who calculates opportunities, and I am offering one. Saturninus studied her with the assessment of a man who had survived decades of Roman politics by reading people accurately. What do you know? I know who Domitian trusts and who he suspects. I know which senators are on his list for prosecution and what evidence he has gathered against them. I know about the financial arrangements. Fund his projects and the debts that certain powerful families have concealed from public knowledge. You could be lying. Condemned prisoners often claim to know secrets, hoping to delay their execution. I could be lying, but I am not. I spent 3 years in the emperor's bed, listening to him talk in moments when he forgot to guard his tongue. I know things he has told no one else. Test me. Ask me something you think only the emperor would know. If I cannot answer, you have lost nothing. If I can answer, you will know that everything else I claim is likely true as well. Saturnus was silent. She could see him calculating, weighing the risk of being seen in conversation with a condemned prisoner against the potential value of what she might reveal. The emperor has a list, he said finally. A list of senators he intends to prosecute for treason. He has mentioned this list to several people, but has never specified who was on it. Tell me who. Valeria felt a moment of cold triumph. She knew the list. She had seen it once when Domitian had been reviewing it late at night, drunk enough to be careless about who was watching. 12 names. Gas Calpurnius Piso heads the list. His family's wealth makes him dangerous. Titus Flavius Clemens is second. The emperor suspects him of sympathy toward the Jews. Marcus Arestinus Clemens third. He has been too friendly with Dishar. Shall I continue? Saturninus's face had gone pale. Stop. That is enough. You know one of those names. Perhaps you know several. Perhaps your own name is further down the list in a section I did not memorize. What do you want? I want to live. I want the spectacle cannelled, my sentence commuted, my exile to some remote province where I can exist without being entertainment for crowds who want to watch me violated by animals. That is impossible. The emperor has scheduled your punishment personally. He will be in attendance. Cancelling now would humiliate him publicly, then find another way. Delay the execution. Arrange an accident that prevents the spectacle. Create an alternative that satisfies his desire for vengeance without requiring my destruction. Why would I take such a risk? The information you have shared is valuable, but not valuable enough to justify defying the emperor on a matter he has made personal. Valeria had expected this objection. She had prepared for it because I know more than the list. I know about Domitian's plans for the eastern provinces. I know about the negotiations with Partha that he has concealed from the Senate. I know about the military dispositions he has ordered, the legions he is repositioning, the campaign he is planning. She paused, letting the implications settle. And I know that certain governors in the East have been in communication with parties who are not loyal to the emperor. I know the names of those governors and the content of those communications. Saturninus' face had gone from pale to something approaching grey. You cannot know that. Domitian knows it. He spoke of it to me, laughing about how he would spring the trap when the time was right. He does not know that I remember, that I understood, that I have been waiting for an opportunity to use what I learned. She met his eyes directly. Your name is not on the list I mentioned, but it is on another list, the list of governors whose communications have been intercepted. You are corresponding with someone the emperor considers an enemy. He has evidence. He is waiting for the right moment. You're lying. Test me again. Ask me about the correspondence. Ask me about dates, about messengers, about anything that only someone who had seen the evidence would know. Saturninus did not ask. His silence was confirmation enough. I want to live, Valeria repeated. Help me live, and I will tell you everything I know about what Domitian is planning. Refuse and I will die today, and you will spend your remaining time wondering when the trap will spring. The senator stood motionless for a long moment. Then he turned to the guard. Leave us. Speak to no one about this conversation. If I learn that you have talked, I will ensure that your family joins the next shipment of prisoners to the arena. The guard left quickly, grateful to be removed from something that had grown far beyond his capacity to manage. Saturninus turned back to Valeria. I cannot save you from everything. The spectacle must begin. The crowd expects it. The emperor demands it, but I may be able to influence how it ends. I may be able to create an opportunity that does not currently exist. What opportunity? The crowd sometimes spares the condemned. It is rare, but it happens. If a prisoner performs exceptionally well, if they display courage or endurance that moves the spectators, the crowd can demand mercy. The emperor can grant or refuse this demand, but refusing a unanimous crowd is politically costly. You want me to survive long enough to win the crowd's sympathy. I want you to give me time. Time to position myself. Time to communicate with allies. Time to prepare. Responses for what Domitian may be planning. If you can survive the spectacle until the crowd demands your release, I can ensure that demand is heard. I can position supporters throughout the arena who will lead the calls for mercy. I can create the appearance of unanimous popular support, and if I cannot survive that long, then you die. And I find another way to address my situation. I am offering you a chance, not a guarantee. The chance is better than what you currently have, which is no chance at all. Valeria considered the offer. It was not salvation. It was a possibility hedged with conditions that she might not be able to fulfill. She would still face the parade, the bistari, perhaps even the bull. She would still endure horrors that no human should experience, but she might live. That possibility, however slim, was more than she had possessed an hour ago. Tell me exactly what I need to do. The spectacle began at the 6th hour, when the sun was highest, and the heat of the Roman summer made the arena. Raid Mori. 23:44. Feel like a furnace designed to bake the entertainment it contained. Valeria was led through the gate of death, the entrance through which condemned prisoners passed on their way to destruction. The gate's name was not metaphorical. Everyone who entered through it was expected to die on the sands beyond. The roar of the crowd hit her like a physical force. 50,000 voices raised in anticipation, recognizing who she was, knowing what had been promised to them. They had come specifically to watch her destruction. Many had paid premium prices for seats that would give them the best view. She was naked as promised. The thin shift had been stripped from her at the gate, leaving her exposed to the August heat and the gaze of everyone in the amphitheater. She forced herself to stand straight, to walk rather than shuffle, to maintain whatever dignity remained possible. The parade was designed to strip that dignity systematically. A herald announced her crimes: adultery, betrayal of the emperor's trust, conspiracy against the imperial house. The charges were exaggerated, as such charges always were, transforming a love affair into treason. The crowd threw things, rotten vegetables, animal dung, objects she could not identify and did not want to. Guards walked alongside her, deflecting anything that might cause serious injury, ensuring that she remained undamaged for the main entertainment. She walked the full circuit of the arena, displayed to every section of seating, subjected to the abuse of every portion of the crowd. The circuit took perhaps 20 minutes each step, a test of her ability to maintain composure while being pelted with filth and hatred. When the parade ended, she was led to the center of the arena where a wooden platform had been erected. This was where the second phase would begin, the entertainment provided by the bistari, the animal handlers before the finale with the bull. But something unexpected happened. As she was being positioned on the platform, she heard voices in the crowd that did not match the general roar of condemnation. Scattered at first, then growing louder. Courage? Well, she faces death with dignity. The calls were coming from sections distributed throughout the arena: upper levels, where the common people sat; middle sections, where the equestrian class had their seats; Saturninus supporters, positioned as he had promised, beginning the process of shifting the crowd's mood. The bestiary hesitated, uncertain how to proceed, when portions of the crowd were expressing something other than bloodlust. They looked toward the imperial box, where Domitian sat watching, his expression invisible at this distance. A signal came from the box: proceed. The bistari approached. I'm going to tell you what happened next, but I need to tell you first about the men who were called bestiari and what their role was in Roman spectacles. The term bisti covered several different occupations. There were professional beast fighters, trained gladiators who fought animals for entertainment. There were beast handlers who managed the animals used in spectacles and ensured they performed as required. And there were the men who served as executioners, using beasts and other methods to dispatch condemned prisoners. The men approaching Valeria were of the third type. Their job was not to fight or to handle, but to degrade and destroy. They had been given specific instructions about what the emperor wanted: prolonged entertainment that would humiliate Valeria before the finale with the bull. But their instructions had also specified limits. They were to damage her emotionally and psychologically. They were not to damage her physically, in ways that would prevent the finale from occurring. The bull was the main attraction. Everything that preceded it was preliminary. This created constraints that Valeria could potentially exploit. The bisti reached the platform. There were 4 of them, muscular men whose bodies bore the scars of years working with dangerous animals. They positioned themselves around her, their presence designed to create threat through proximity. "The Emperor wants a show," one of them said, his voice pitched to carry to nearby sections of the crowd. "Let us give him one." The crowd roared approval, but Valeria had been thinking during the parade. She had been analyzing the situation as she had learned to analyze situations during 3 years of court politics, and she had identified something that might give her leverage. "The crowd is divided," she said, her voice carrying with the clarity she had developed for occasions when projecting over palace noise was necessary. "Listen to them. Some want blood, some want mercy. You have a choice about which faction you strengthen." The Bistari paused, confused by a prisoner who was speaking rather than cowering. "If you destroy me slowly, you satisfy the faction that wants blood, but you also create sympathy among the faction that wants mercy. The longer you take, the more time the mercy faction has to grow. We have our orders. Your orders are to entertain the crowd. A divided crowd is not entertainment. It is discomfort. The Emperor is watching. If the spectacle produces more controversy than satisfaction, someone will be blamed. It will not be the Emperor." One of the Bistari stepped closer, his face showing anger at being lectured by a condemned woman. "You think you can talk your way out of this? I think you can choose how this proceeds. Quick and brutal, which limits the time for mercy calls to build, or slow and degrading, which gives my supporters time to shift the crowd's mood. Supporters, you have no supporters. You are a condemned adulteress." "Listen," the voices were still there, scattered, but persistent. Calls for courage, for dignity, for mercy that was not yet warranted, but that was being prepared for. The Bistari exchanged glances. They were not educated men, but they had survived years in a profession that killed careless practitioners. They understood that their situation had complications that simple orders did not address. "We proceed as instructed," the leader said finally, but perhaps not as slowly as originally planned. What followed was still degrading. Valeria endured what she had known she would endure. The hands and the exposure, and the treatment that was designed to strip away any sense of self-worth. But it was compressed 30 minutes rather than the hour that had been promised. The Bistari hurrying through their assigned tasks with efficiency rather than extending them for maximum impact. And throughout the voices continued. The calls for mercy grew louder as the crowd watched a woman endure horror without breaking, without begging, without providing the satisfaction that cruelty demands from its victims. When the Bistari finished and withdrew, something had shifted in the arena. The roar of the crowd had changed tenor. It was not unanimous support for Valeria. There were still thousands who wanted to see her destroyed, but it was no longer unanimous condemnation either. She had survived the second phase. The finale remained. The apparatus was wheeled into the arena on a cart pulled by slaves. The crowd fell silent as it appeared, recognizing what it was, understanding. Raid Mori 32:11. What it meant, the wooden cow, the device that would position Valeria for the bull, the apparatus that had been used for centuries to recreate the myth of Pasifia for the entertainment of Roman crowds. It was larger than Valeria had imagined. The framework was perhaps 7 ft long and 4 t high, covered in hide that had been painted and decorated to resemble an actual here. Openings at strategic points made clear how the condemned woman would be positioned and what access the bull would have. The bull itself was led into the arena through a different gate. It was enormous, black, muscular, clearly one of the Spanish fighting bulls that Roman entertainers prized for their size and aggression. It had been kept in darkness and poked with goats until it was frantic with rage, prepared to attack anything it encountered. Handlers kept the bull controlled with ropes and poles while the apparatus was positioned. The condemned woman would be placed inside, and then the handlers would withdraw, leaving the bull to do what it had been trained to do. Valeria was lifted from the platform and carried toward the apparatus. She did not struggle. Struggling would accomplish nothing except providing entertainment for those who wanted to see her fear. But she was thinking, calculating, searching for any possibility that remained. The crowd was chanting now. The chant was split, some sections calling for the spectacle to proceed, others calling for mercy. The arena filled with competing voices that made it impossible to determine which side was larger. She was placed at the entrance to the apparatus. Hands began to position her to guide her into the framework that would hold her in place for what was coming, and then something happened that no one had anticipated. A messenger ran into the arena from the Gate of Life, the entrance used by performers and officials, not by condemned prisoners. He was shouting something, waving something in his hand, racing toward the imperial box with urgency that stopped the proceedings. The handlers paused. The Bistari froze. The entire arena fell silent, watching the messenger reach the imperial box and hand whatever he was carrying to someone in the emperor's entourage. A long pause, then activity in the box, people moving, conferring, the emperor himself rising from his seat. A horn sounded the signal for a halt in proceedings. Clear the arena, a herald announced, his voice carrying over the suddenly silent crowd. There has been a development. The spectacle is suspended, not cancelled, suspended. Suspension meant life for at least the next few minutes, life that Valeria had not expected to have. She was dragged from the apparatus and taken back through the gate of death, back to the holding cells, back to darkness where she had no idea what had happened or why. But she was alive. The development, Valeria learned later, was an assassination attempt. While the spectacle in the arena was proceeding, conspirators had attacked the emperor's private residence, targeting members of his household. The attack had failed. Domian's paranoid security measures had proven effective, but the attempt itself was significant. The conspirators had been captured. Under torture, they had revealed names. Lucius Antonius Saturninus was among them. The senator who had promised to help Valeria, who had positioned supporters in the arena, who had compressed the Bastari's entertainment to give the Mercy faction time to build. He had been planning the emperor's assassination even as he bargained for information about the emperor's plans. When his name emerged from the tortured conspirators, guards had been dispatched to arrest him. He had been in the arena watching the spectacle he had helped to modify when they came for him. His arrest had been the development that interrupted proceedings. And in the chaos of conspiracy revealed and conspirator arrested, the question of what to do with Valeria had been momentarily forgotten. She spent 3 days in the cells beneath the arena while the emperor dealt with the conspiracy. 3 days of Raid Mori. 36:49. Uncertainty, not knowing whether her execution would resume or whether the suspension would become something more permanent. On the 4th day, she received a visitor. The Empress Dishar entered the cell with guards who remained outside, giving the 2 women privacy for a conversation that would determine Valeria's fate. "You should be dead," Dishar said. "My husband intended to watch you destroyed. He was looking forward to it, I know. Instead, you are alive, and he is consumed with a conspiracy that your lover apparently helped organize. Marcus was not part of any conspiracy. He was a fool who fell in love with the wrong woman. His only crime was wanting me. His crime was touching what belonged to the emperor. Your crime was permitting it. These are offenses that require punishment. I have been punished. The parade, the Bastari, I endured what the crowd witnessed. You endured the preliminaries. The main entertainment never occurred." Valeria met the Empress's eyes directly. "What do you want? I want to understand." "Something you bargained with Saturninus. You traded information for his support in the arena. What did you tell him?" "I told him about the list. The senators my husband intends to prosecute. I told him that his name was on another list. The list of governors whose communications have been intercepted. Was his name on that list? I don't know. I was guessing based on what I knew about his ambitions and his connections. The guess was apparently accurate." Dishar was silent for a long moment. "You understand that by telling him these things, you may have accelerated the conspiracy. You may have pushed him to act before he was ready, leading to the failed attempt and his arrest. I understand. You understand that my husband, when he finishes dealing with the conspirators, will remember that your execution was interrupted. He will want it completed. He will want the finale that was denied him. I understand that as well. Then you understand your situation. You are alive only because of timing." The conspiracies. Raid Mori. 39:08. Discovery coincided with your spectacle. When the crisis passes, your reprieve ends. Valeria absorbed this. She had known it, had understood since the suspension that survival was temporary unless she found a way to make it permanent. "Why are you here?" she asked the Empress. "Why visit a condemned woman who was your husband's mistress?" Dimish's expression shifted slightly. "Because you know things about my husband, about his plans, about the people around him. You have demonstrated this by bargaining with Saturninus. I want to know what else you know, and in exchange, I may be able to influence your fate. My husband listens to me more than people realize. If I advocate for exile rather than execution, he may agree, especially if he believes I have reasons for the advocacy." "What reasons could you offer?" "I could tell him that you have information he needs. Information about the conspiracy that you obtained through your bargain with Saturninus. Information that you will only reveal if your life is spared. Would that be true?" "It could become true." Tell me what Saturninus said to you, what he revealed about the conspiracy, the other conspirators, the plans. I will present this as information you possess obtained during your negotiation. Your value as an intelligent source will justify your continued existence. Valeria considered it was another bargain, another transaction trading information for survival. The pattern of her existence since condemnation, using what she knew to extend her life. 1. Exchange at a time. Saturninus told me little about the conspiracy directly. She said he was careful, but he revealed things indirectly. Names he was concerned about, timing he was nervous about, the fact that others were involved in his communications with the emperor's enemies. Tell me everything, every detail, no matter how small, Valeria told her. What Saturninus had said, what his reactions had suggested, what she had inferred from the patterns of his concern. It was not comprehensive. Intelligence, she truly did not know the full scope of the conspiracy, but it was enough to suggest that she had value as a source. When she finished, Delicia rose. I will speak with my husband. I cannot promise the outcome, but I believe he will agree that you are more useful alive than dead. Exiled to a remote province as you originally requested of Saturninus. No return, no communication with Rome, no future that could threaten imperial interests. That is all I wanted. Life, even diminished life, you may come to regret that wish. Raid Mori. 42:11. Exile is not the mercy it appears. The provinces where inconvenient people are sent are harsh places, and the people sent there rarely thrive. Harsh places are preferable to the arena. Survival, however harsh, is preferable to the bull. Domitia left without further comment. Valeria was alone again, waiting to learn whether her bargain would prove sufficient. The decision came 5 days later. Emperor Domitian, consumed with the aftermath of the conspiracy, had accepted his wife's argument. Valeria had information value that exceeded her entertainment value. She would be exiled to the eastern provinces, specifically to a small garrison town on the edge of Parthian territory, where she would remain under military supervision for the rest of her life. The sentence was announced publicly, framed as imperial mercy granted to a prisoner who had provided valuable intelligence about conspirators against the state. The crowd that had watched her degradation would never see the finale they had been promised. Some would be disappointed, others would. Raid Mori. 43:19. Remember that the mercy faction had been growing, that the calls for compassion had been gaining strength, that perhaps the suspension of the spectacle had been divinely inspired. Valeria was transporting from Rome within days, traveling under guard to the distant posting that would be her home for whatever years remained. The journey took 3 months, crossing half the known world, carrying her from the heart of civilization to its edge. The garrison town was everything Dishar had warned about. Harsh conditions, limited resources, a posting so undesirable that the soldiers stationed there were either criminals themselves or unfortunates who had offended the wrong people. Valeria was given a small house, a small stipend, and instructions to report weekly to the garrison commander. She was alive. She was free within the constraints of exile. She had survived the arena, the conspiracy, the emperor's rage. It was more than she had any right to expect. The years that followed were difficult, but not unbearable. Valeria adapted to her circumstances with the same pragmatic intelligence that had kept her alive through the crisis. She learned the local language, developed relationships with traders who passed through the garrison, established herself as a useful presence rather than merely an imperial embarrassment. She heard news from Rome intermittently through soldiers and merchants who brought gossip along with their goods. Emperor Demoscen's reign continued, his paranoia deepening, his executions multiplying. Raid Mori. 45:00. Senators, generals, even members of his own family fell victim to his suspicions. The conspiracy that had interrupted her spectacle proved to be the first of many plots and counterplots that would eventually end in the emperor's assassination in 96 AD. She heard that Empress Dishia had been implicated in the final conspiracy, the one that actually succeeded. The woman who had bargained for Valeria's life had apparently decided that her husband was too dangerous to permit continued rule. Whether Domitia had planned the assassination or merely acquiesced to it, she survived the transition, living comfortably under subsequent emperors who valued her discretion. Valeria lived to see all of this from her distant exile. She lived to see Decian's fall, Nerva's brief reign, Trajan's ascension. She lived to see Rome's empire reach its greatest extent under emperors who governed more sanely than the man who had condemned her to the arena. She never returned to Rome. The exile was permanent. Regardless of which emperor held power, she was a reminder of things that subsequent rulers preferred to forget. The excesses of Domitian's entertainment, the spectacles that had gone too far, the apparatus that had been wheeled out to destroy a woman for the crime of loving unwisely. But she lived, she survived, and she carried with her for the remaining decades of her existence the memory of what she had endured,